So hello, and I'm here with Steve Kirsch, who's the founder and chief executive officer of Token, and he happens to be a Silicon Valley heavyweight as well, having founded 7 high-tech companies previously. So what I wanted to do is just have a chat with Steve about the industry, about open banking, and about where he sees the future.
Open banking is kind of the final transition. The financial system has always been pretty closed off from the rest of the world. Most places you have APIs, so computer programs, applications can access and manipulate the data. And banking has been one of those industries which is kind of the last one to get on board the train. So today I can access my bank and I can look up my balance, look at my transaction history, I can make payments, do bill payments, apply for a loan, and I can do that all online.
And do you see this coming in the near future?
Oh yeah, I mean it's the next transition. It was the first big transition into the digital domain for banks was getting on the internet. Mm-hmm. When the internet first came out, banks were looked at as a threat, mm-hmm. and it took 10 years between the time when the first bank came on the internet to pretty much the last bank mm-hmm. came on the internet. 10 years, because people didn't realize and thought it was a threat. And open banking is kind of the same way. Oh my gosh, I'm going to open up my bank to all of these apps. I'm going to be inundated, and life will come to an end, and there'll be security breaches and so forth. But the reality is that this will actually make things much more secure.
So Steve, one of the amazing things that I found about you is that you've actually started 7 amazing companies, and that's great. Which of these companies would you say made the most impact, and which are you most proud of?
Yeah, I'm proud of most of them in terms of the impact. My first company was creating the optical mouse, and that's used universally throughout the world. And so that is technology that I pioneered. There was a company after that, Frame Technology, and that technology is for creating documents. And it's used by Apple, it's used by Boeing to document their jets. I created one of the first internet search engines. And, so that technology people use multiple times a day. In fact, the creators of Google came to me originally and said, hey, would you like to buy the technology for $1 million? And I like to say that I wisely turned them down so that they could go and raise a lot of money from venture capitalists to start Google. Mm-hmm. So I'm actually,
wow.
Because I made the right decision to turn them down, we have, all the services at
Amazing.
Google today. It would
Excellent.
have been a different story. So, I think perhaps the impact on that decision, which was, my wife tells me that wasn't quite the right decision, but probably that decision, the thing I didn't do, maybe have had the greatest impact.
Because sometimes I think the things that we learn from in life are not the things that we do, but the things that we don't do, because they teach us really good lessons. So that's great. So speaking of great lessons, I find that there's a lot of, fintech is the buzzword these days, and everybody wants to be an entrepreneur, and that's great. But I think they often fail because they don't know how hard they have to work, and they don't know how many sleepless nights they have to have, and they don't know that it's not only about the decisions you make, but also the things that you learn from the decisions that you don't make, like you just mentioned. So if you had one tip for fintechs or one tip for entrepreneurs who are about to set out and start their journey, what would you say that one tip would be?
Probably really understand the product market fit. Mm-hmm. That this is a journey, and when I first had this idea and said, modernize banks. Banks have very old technology. Their security is like 20 years old, and if I came to banks with a compelling proposition to upgrade their technology to modern day, and it would only cost them a few $100,000, and it'd be like a 50-year facelift on the technology, I thought, this is kind of a no-brainer for a bank to make, and a decision for a bank to make. And I was surprised it was much tougher than I thought it would be. So even that you should always validate your assumptions, okay, right? By going to your customer and saying, well, if I gave you this, and can I get a pre-order, mm-hmm. right? Because if you can get money up front, mm-hmm. that's a pretty good indication the product market fit.
Okay, great. I truly believe in the concept in life, which is basically, at the end of the day, the only thing that we have is the story we leave behind. And my question to you is, first, why do you get up every day? And what story do you want to leave behind? Because you could actually essentially retire today. You mentioned that earlier in the interview. But you keep going. Why do you keep going? And what story do you want to leave behind?
I keep going because I like to make a difference in my life, and I live my life. It gives me pleasure to know that I've contributed something and made a difference in the world. And that's what gives me enjoyment.